It also obviously comes in the context of this rapidly changing COVID situation and the alarming effects it's having on health systems. So the idea behind these terms of reference and this initial proposal we will submit is to select TA providers who are essentially pre-cleared, pre-qualified to then respond to task orders for specific countries. So it's kind of a short list. So in that sense, it is an opportunity and not guaranteed business. There's no budget amount that's been communicated. There are not specific support engagements to date. Those will be developed separately as individual terms of reference, scopes of work for individual GFF priority countries. So the way that this has been pitched to us is that the provider, that would be our consortium, would provide support to World Bank policy dialogue with client country governments. So again, there's a lot of, I think, ambiguity around exactly what this would look like, and it will likely look quite different depending on each country scope of work. And then the scopes of work for each country will either be bid individually in a small, light, sort of rapid turnaround bid, or they can also, the World Bank and GFF can also select pre-approved providers. So that there are two options for the way that they might go forward with any particular country assignment. As Barbara was mentioning, there are sort of two objectives that are outlined in the terms of reference. One, which focuses in squarely on health systems strengthening, and objective two, which focuses in more on behavior change, community engagement. So our consortium, those two objectives can be addressed separately by the people who are bidding now. Our consortium is proposing to address them in an interrelated and more holistic way. So let me stop there and just see if there are any initial questions on these terms of reference as we've received them. Or anything that anyone who's more familiar with them would like to add. Cheryl, Henok.
Allison, maybe I'll just add that the firms that were shortlisted were invited to submit questions for clarification on the terms of reference in the RFP. And we have submitted some questions, others have as well, and they are now being posted in a bit of a rolling way on the portal. And so I'm trying to compile all the questions and the responses to those questions. So we might be able to give further clarification as we dig in and understand what some of these responses have been.
Also, feel free to make use of the chat box if you have a question that you want to just park for us to look at some point. If not, I will continue. Okay, and obviously we shared the terms of reference with each of you, so you've had a chance to look it over. Okay. So if there are no questions, I would like to talk a little bit about our overarching approach that we would like to propose, that then we would obviously need to tailor to meet a specific country level task order. So what is outlined here on this slide is what we see as the two key intertwined elements of our approach. On the left-hand side is the backbone function, and then in the center is the support to dialogue and implementation at the country level. So maybe let me just say a few words about these two sort of core elements of our consortium approach. The backbone function is meant to support both individual country engagements, but also have a broader role of kind of capitalizing and learning across all engagements that the consortium would have. it is the primary mechanism to interface with GFF. It will take a lead role in brokering and sort of tailoring the support that we would be proposing to for a particular task order. There would be some light management support to our overall consortium. We would also, in this role, I think, leverage remote coaching and facilitation for country level assignments and for the cross learning. It would have a quality, the backbone function has a quality assurance role. So making sure that we are meeting performance objectives that we've mutually agreed to across our assignments. And would also have a strong M&E function and adaptive learning sort of design function for country level assignments. And then obviously, you know, R4D puts a huge premium on joint learning. We think that this is not about discrete country assignments only, it's about broader learning and capitalization across country assignments. So this is what we term a backbone function. This is language that comes largely from the collective impact model, but it's something that we have used at R4D through different mechanisms, and one that we think is really critical to this consortium approach. The second key pillar, if you will, is so the foundational partner role, which is about support to dialogue and implementation. So this is more at the country level task order level, where individual institutions or some sort of team of institutions within our consortium and experts within our consortium would be identified to provide tailored support to a specific country. And here the functions are obviously co-creating that tailored support with R4D, obviously with the GFF and the World Bank, but especially with country stakeholders, ensuring that dialogue and that listening function. Then providing actually technical support if that's what's asked for, stakeholder engagement, all of the elements that we think are important to providing demand-driven, evidence-based support to reforms. And then to support the actual M&E and adaptive learning at country level. So these are sort of the key pillars of this approach. I want to just reiterate that the mobilization of the implementation support would really be in response to a specific scope of reference, scope of work. It will be demand driven, and we'll figure out together what kind of criteria we will use to assemble that team, but not all partners in our consortium will engage in every assignment that would be won. So there's no sort of guarantee for any one partner. Rather, we would be engaging dynamically as opportunities open up. So each of us as partners in this consortium will have to manage a certain level of uncertainty as the opportunities arise, be realistic and honest about our capability to engage at any given moment, and probably will be obliged to be somewhat flexible. So I know those are big asks. This is sort of an unusual RFP. Let me stop and see if there are questions or comments. I'm looking in the chat box since so far I'm being greeted with silence. And the mini bid process, Zal asked about, do we know about that? Barbara, I know you've had some experience with that. Okay, I see you're already giving that. It has been indicated to us that it would be fairly light. I do think, however, given the complexity of our consortium and how many members we are, and we will need to figure out how to have a rapid response. How are we going to structure ourselves to have a rapid response?
I have a question. This is Kelechi. I couldn't see the hand raising icon, so I just sorry
Jump
if I
in.
interrupt.
No.
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. Definitely do appreciate the lack of sort of clarity and the sort of the very generic way that the RFP from the World Bank and GFF's perspective has come out. And I do hear you in terms of the need to be flexible and sort of be ready, whenever called upon to do things. From the structure, I mean, is there, just trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, so this is just, is this sort of the traditional, it feels like it's the traditional prime and sub sort of type of engagement, right? So for the implementing partners, it's, do we have visibility to when these mini bids come up? And is it an active process where, and I think it'll be good to just walk through at least our current hypothesis in terms of how this would work. Is it such that a mini bid comes, and I believe, R4D as the prime would have visibility to it, and then you would make the determination which of the consortium partners, depending on the country context and the technical expertise, you would want to engage with. So, or is it a situation where the foundational partners, for instance, have visibility to that and can sort of raise up their hands and say, hey, we think this is an area of interest, that we think we can do this because of so and so reasons. So it'll be good to understand how that would how that would work out. And yeah, and particularly how do we see the collaboration working, not just between R4D as the prime and the foundational partners, but also amongst the foundational partners in, say, large countries like Nigeria or the Congo or wherever. What will be the modality for that collaboration?
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that you raised this question, Kelechi. And to be really clear, we do not want to situate ourselves in a traditional prime role at all. And we absolutely want for all of the foundational partners to take ownership and proactively engage in these mini bids. So I think that one of the points one of the focal points of today's call, and this will be the starting point, and if we are, if we get pre-approved, we'll want to delve into this more deeply. But how do we want to decide collectively what those decision-making processes are, how we're going to match make between the consortium members, our partners, foundational partners, and also others that we will want to bring in for any one country assignment, because I think we're clear that we will probably always want to associate, other experts, even other institutions potentially, depending on the scope of work. So just in short, that's what I would say, but please, Cheryl, what would you add to that?
Thanks, Kelechi, for the question, and Allison. I just think that's part of what we want to accomplish today, is to get some feedback. We don't have a lot of time. But we just want to have this initial conversation to get ideas from everyone, how we can make this inclusive, how we can make sure that everyone is a part owner of this, but we also have clear roles. And then, if we are successful and clear this hurdle, then we will dig more deeply into our processes of working together. But we're very committed to co-creating this and trying to make it fair, but not burdensome.
Barbara.
Hi. Yes, I know we don't have time to dig deep in this, but I agree with my colleague from Nigeria that I think if we could outline the process so that from the beginning, when the request comes in from the World Bank country TTL and or the GFF country liaison, that there be some type of process, almost like a, bi-weekly or every 2 weeks email process that says, this is what's in the pipeline, this is what's been procured, this is what's been, the team is going out, some type of rolling mechanism that keeps all the core partners informed and gives them the opportunity to say, think of me.
Yeah.
As opposed to directing
Yes.
the traffic.
Yes, totally
Great.
agree. And you guys are anticipating how we're going to spend the rest of our time together, because those are the two elements that we want to focus in on. If there are not any other urgent questions right now, I'd like to go to the next slide so that we can start to move into discussing this more concretely. Katie, if you would, go to the next slide. Oops, one back. Thank you. Okay, so basically we shared with you we wanted to be able to get concrete and also to focus on how we will work together under this arrangement, especially as we get our bearings. So we developed this illustrative case study, and we wanted to use that as a way to talk about this concretely. So I hope that you have all had a chance to study it and digest it. So I think we want to start to build consensus and alignment on kind of the broad contours of our approach. So the phases that are outlined in the illustrative case and the synergies we have across our consortium. But more explicitly, and Cheryl's going to walk us through that case in just a minute, but more explicitly, our governance arrangements as a consortium, and especially how we mobilize to respond to country demand. And that's what we're going to tackle in our group discussions. So again, we're not defining upfront sort of traditional roles and responsibilities and budget allocation. We don't have that information. And we want at the end of today for us to have the basis to begin to feel more comfortable about how we'll navigate our consortium dynamics to respond to specific country task orders. So just a few things we need to tackle. How are we going to make decisions about which country task orders we want to, as a consortium, go after? We need to come to some sort of consensus about the backbone support function and how it engages within and across engagements. And we'll probably need to come up with some sort of charter that that we sign on to, that really establishes how, the principles of how we're going to work together. In terms of the matchmaking and the brokering for specific engagements, from a very logistical standpoint, I think what we'll try to do to make ourselves more nimble is that R4D would put in place some sort of master agreement, so that when we wanted to respond with each of the partners, so that when we wanted to respond to a country-specific scope of work, we could just have an amendment to that master agreement that would be based on the specifics of the scope of work. And then we need to be coming to some agreement about how we will compose our team by country assignment, and agree on what criteria we'll use to put that together. So with that, I would like to hand over to Cheryl to just walk through at a high level the illustrative case study that was developed. And then we're going to move into two breakout groups to really get into the meat of it.
Thanks, Allison, everyone. Just to give a bit of background on this illustrative assignment, illustrative scope, it was something, maybe the next slide, please. It was something that was suggested in the RFP, actually suggested that we take a piece of work that we've already done and show how we would approach when a scope of work came along, how we would approach responding to it. And so we decided to take something that was a mixture of work that has already been done, but also looking forward to additional aspects of this work that would involve responding to the current COVID pandemic and making sure that essential services have continuity in the country. So we're trying to put together what we think would be a very possible and realistic scenario for a scope that could come through if we were to be one of the pre-qualified organizations and partnerships. So the idea of the illustrative scope is to lay out what we think something might look like, and then how would we respond to it, both our process within our consortium and also our approach. What would our proposal look like? And so as Allison noted, we want to get some alignment on these three pieces. So first of all, as our consortium, how do we work together to even surface these assignments and opportunities? How do we make decisions about responding to them? How and with which partners? And then how do we actually design the work if we're going to respond to that particular opportunity? And so the illustrative case that we laid out, it responds to some of the very specific requests in the RFP to come up with an overall timeline with activities and milestones. When would we actually seek approval of the client? How would we engage with different partners on the ground? And so we tried to lay out what we think it would look like with the different phases of actual design and implementation of support, and then how different players in our group would have different roles depending on what we decided. So that overall approach is laid out in the illustrative case, and we're not going to discuss that in detail today, but please have a look at these phases, how we think it would go based on our experience and experience working with all of you in different assignments and different other opportunities. But these phases of scoping, co-creating work with the country stakeholders, designing the intervention, and then implementing, learning, and adapting. Those are the basic phases that we have proposed would be the foundation and the framework of our approach in general to any assignment, then of course tailored to the specifics. So please, we would love to get some feedback on that outside of this workshop, but really focusing today, given this illustrative example, how we would activate our consortium, both on the governance side, and then also this very specific piece of matchmaking and mounting a response. So the way that we have framed this is looking at an example of work that's actually happening in Ghana to support the government in its immediate COVID response, but then looking forward how to take that very centralized national approach and get to the community level to bring a package of community-based services for COVID to the community level to help the government design that broadly and then work with stakeholders and civil society organizations at the community level to adapt and tailor that approach. So we're using this generic outline of an assignment to help us dig in, to refine our approach, and also today with all of you get some ideas about the functions of the backbone, how we keep our governance structure going so that we're ready to respond to an assignment such as this, and then how do we do the very specific matchmaking and response. So maybe I'll stop there. That's how we wanted to set up the small group work, how we're going to try to take this example and work through what our consortium looks like on the governance and matchmaking side, setting you up to provide additional comments on the approach and methodology after the workshop. And so that just to kind of get us situated around something concrete like this illustrative case.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. Any questions at this phase? What I'd like to do now is set up our group work. We're, I think, pretty much on time, which is exciting because I think that the group work is really a priority for us, and I want to make sure that we have adequate discussion time. So next slide, please. So again, we would like to focus in on these two aspects related to sort of consortium governance, dynamic and decision making, especially around how do we scope and assess opportunities as they come up and maintain our dynamic while in between opportunities. And then the second aspect, how do we respond? You know, how do we create a team, match skills, et cetera, to respond to country task orders? We'd like to spend more time, a little bit more time on the latter. So we've allocated 15 minutes for talking about decision making and the scoping, assessing opportunities, and 30 minutes to talk about how we would sort of match make within our consortium to respond to task orders. These things are interrelated. There are going to be two groups. You're assigned to one, and Hinak will show that on the screen now. You'll be automatically sent into your groups and automatically brought back into plenary. Katie, if you could go to the next slide. And I will be facilitating group 2, and Cheryl will be facilitating group 1. And Hinak and Keith will be trying to capture all of the discussion points live on the screen as we go. We won't be able to report back to each other on these discussions in this phone call, although we'll obviously capture it and share it with you. And then when we reconvene, we'll talk through really the practicalities of how we need to produce the proposal over the next 10 days. So are there any questions about breaking into groups? You don't have to do anything, you stay put, and you will be absorbed into one of these two groups. Yes. Kelechi?
Yeah, hi. I just have a question. I mean, not related to the groups, but just thinking and just reflecting before I drop off. Some of the answers to some of these questions, right, in terms of how the consortium governance and the dynamics will be largely informed by the nature of the support that the country needs, right? So I'm just wondering to what extent the teams need to focus on the problem that we're trying to solve and sort of spend time, you know, describing that and characterizing that, and then letting that inform, you know, the way the right partners and the right way the consortium or the TA providers need to organize to solve that particular problem. And the reason I'm asking, because a lot of our conversation here, rightly so, is focused internally on how we work together. And I believe that in terms of responding to the RFP, we need to have a position, or at least a refined position in terms of our principles of engagement in country, how we are going to work with different stakeholders, our theory of change in terms of addressing some of these broader issues. Should the teams spend some time as well, you know, looking at, I mean, I know it's illustrative, but the issues, and us sort of figuring out a way to link those issues to how we organize ourselves, and identifying certain key, you know, principles in terms of making that link. Because if I fear that if it's just inward focused on our own governance, I assume that we're all, I mean, we've worked with R4D. I assume there are many major issues there. I mean, yeah, I'm just speaking optimistically, but in terms of that link between the problem we're trying to solve and how we organize ourselves, I think that would be a good thing for the groups to also try to focus on in the breakout. Albeit it's quite illustrative at the moment, but I'm worried that if that gets lost, then we might fall into the risk of being too inward focused in this. And that's just my thoughts. Or perhaps there is another forum to actually look through the content and how we're going to sort of address what is being asked of us as a consortium.
Thanks, Kelechi. So I think it's a bit of a tricky situation in that the challenge is going to be very country specific. And I think that what we see as really unique about our value proposition is that we want to add up to more than a country specific response. We want to have broader value beyond any one country engagement. And we have a limited amount of time. We have 45 minutes for the group work. So I think I'll leave maybe each group to sort of situate themselves on that. But I do think that we need to have some clarity just about how we're going to operationalize this internally, because I think that that is at the basis of people engaging, investing, and feeling like this is a fair value for everyone engaged. But again, we can take this up in groups. Cheryl, do you have anything to add before we split up?
Yes, Allison, and thank you for this. I think we really had to prioritize. We have to get this proposal done. And so we wanted to have the discussions that are essential, that everyone feels okay about the process that we're proposing. And then if we're successful, there will be other opportunities for us to continue to co-create our approach and really align around those things. So I appreciate that very much. And we're just, I think, prioritizing for just this phase, but we anticipate a lot more opportunities to discuss together.
Great. Any final questions before you are sent to your discussion groups? And thank you, Kelechi, for participating. I know you're going to have to jump, so we appreciate having you for this first half of the call. Okay, so stay put, and Henok, make the magic happen. We'll see you in the breakout groups in just a second.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I think we
Hi,
have
Cheryl.
Hi. I think we have a very exciting group in our breakout group. I think we have two Walters. Hi, Walter, both of you.
Hi, Sharon. I'm just using two devices, that's why. So.
Oh, no worries. Nice to see everyone. So I am going to share my screen and take notes directly on the screen so that we can all kind of make any corrections or edits, make sure that I'm hearing things correctly. And Henok is also going to be taking additional notes to make sure that we capture this discussion. But what we wanted to focus on, as Allison mentioned, with this illustrative case in mind, if this is the kind of assignment that comes along, how are we going to organize ourselves as a consortium to keep up the information flowing, to make sure everyone is aware of opportunities as they arise? What is our process for making decisions to make a proposal or not? And then how do we decide within our group how best to match our partners with that opportunity and to support the engagement design process? So I have just a few slides to guide that discussion, but I don't want to direct it too much. We want to try to hear from you what you think would be the right process that would be inclusive and fair, obviously not over bureaucratic because everyone's very busy, but just to get some brainstorming going now, not to necessarily solve all of the problems. Any questions or thoughts before we get this discussion going? Okay, so we want to be ready as a consortium if an opportunity like this illustrative assignment comes along, and we want to first of all hear from you. What should we be doing to stay connected, to make sure the information is flowing, that we are aware that everyone is aware when there are opportunities, and that we have a process in place to act quickly to decide, should we go after this opportunity or not? That's the first decision. And then the second one is how to do the matchmaking and the design, but we'll discuss that, I think, as a second step. So we've already heard one suggestion from Barbara that we should have some kind of a rolling mechanism to keep all the core partners informed about the pipeline, that our intelligence, as we are hearing potential opportunities, that we are gathering those as the backbone organization, or you might hear them, but we have all of these opportunities coming to one place that we're sharing with everyone regularly and give everyone the chance to raise their hand rather than R4D directing traffic, I think was Barbara's words. So that's just one idea to get our conversation going. Any other thoughts about what this should look like to be inclusive but not bureaucratic? And Hinnock, since I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat. So if you could also maybe help monitor that and jump in with ideas that are coming in the chat.
Sounds good, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl. I think this is a great way to start in terms of what you just described. How do we raise our hands rather than moving, just directing traffic? Maybe we can start by looking at that and also defining maybe general principles around the raising of hands. Maybe things around maybe fairness or just, yes, raise your hands. Or why do you raise your hands just because you want to raise your hands, or do you raise your hands because you have the competency, because you don't have a lot of work currently going on, because you have, so what are the criteria for raising your hand? So that it's not like every job opportunity that comes, then everybody raises their hands. What are the things that we should consider as a consortium? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So thank you. So is there agreement that we want that every partner should have the opportunity to raise their hand for every opportunity as long as some principles and criteria are met? Does anyone disagree?
Hello, this is Jean-Paul. Can I make a comment?
Please, Jean-Paul. Nice to hear you.
Hello. Yeah, nice to hear you too. I think there will be some rooms as well for, or maybe it's quite important that we discuss how do we expect the opportunities to come, to emerge. It I hope that opportunities will come from countries, will come from the founder, or will it be like we will have also to create some of those opportunities that members of the consortium may be actively involved in creating some opportunities in countries and contribute in formulating the demand also for countries. And then by this way, we will have also some people or some institutions that will be quite well placed because they have contributed also to place themselves or to align be well placed to work or to contribute in those activities. So this is one way of looking at the issue, and then we will have also those kind of opportunities that will like fall from the sky, and then it will be up to yes, to those who are interested by this opportunity that is coming from, I would say, from the sky, to say, okay, I'm interested by this, and there will be some kind of arbitration process. So what I would think we can discuss about this second kind of opportunity is how kind of arbitration process or allocation process that is fair, that take into account the availability of the various people, but will need also a certain level of commitment or engagement. Otherwise, if we take commitment with the founder and there are some tasks to do and nobody is available or is okay to do it, then we are in trouble. So finding this threshold between freedom and flexibility, but also a certain level of commitment is a key matter to discuss in this space. And I see two kinds of opportunities. One that we co-create, the one of engage in raising from the countries, or kind of activities, opportunities that come from from the founder, that's an initiative from the founder, or that's really surprised the team, I would say surprise in bracket the team. And then the question about, okay, who we want to take this task will emerge. So I don't know if you see that way, if that raised some comments from the group.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. That's a very important distinction because as we know in real life, these opportunities don't all fall from the sky. That there's a lot of work that happens that might be, stemming from other engagements that a partner might already have that then could lead to an opportunity. And then that might be a different process if it is going to be fair, that if you've invested in creating this opportunity that you should have, it shouldn't be all equal necessarily, that there should be an advantage to that partner in getting access to that assignment. Does anyone disagree with that?
Hi, Cheryl. Just flagging the potential for a conflict of interest, right? So if someone generates the opportunity because perhaps they were already involved, I definitely agree with the fact that the partners should definitely be considered in that. But if some people have, should I say, the potential, right? Or they have the connections and know a lot more what's going on. So we also don't end up with a situation where it kind of just appears that everything is going to a particular area. And so I think that in terms of defining criteria, we really need to do a great job in terms of honing down what would then be fair, equitable, even as we reward people who go over, above and beyond, if that makes sense.
Yes, Kichi, thank you so much for that. Nice to hear you. I think you've raised a few different points in that comment that we need to take into consideration. I think one is the idea that you raised about conflict of interest. And I think in this particular case, it is something we need to be very cognizant of, given the World Bank and GFF procurement regulations. So there are, cases where if you are seen as creating or designing an opportunity, that you are no longer then eligible to be contracted to implement it. So I think that's something that we just need to keep working on. Co-creation with the country and the country stakeholders is a very important principle, I think, that we all share. And how do we then align that principle with the realities of the procurement regulations of the World Bank and GFF? So I think that's something as a consortium that we need to keep working on so that we can find that balance, that we don't just have all the opportunities created in a vacuum that then we have to respond to, but that part of co-creation can be built in. And then the second part of your point, Kechi, I think is also important. And maybe I want to hear a little bit more of what you mean. So are you saying that if some partners have more opportunities to be on the ground and creating opportunities, would that keep others out more? Could you maybe say a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, so I was looking at a situation where there is a partner that is consistently, like creating a pipeline of opportunities. And if we go based on the fact that if you have created an opportunity, then you should definitely be leveraging that opportunity. And perhaps it's an opportunity that only one partner can leverage, then it's almost like we have just the one partner that is doing quite a lot of things. Again, I'm kind of locating this in a vacuum, right? Because we will definitely have other criteria, right? First of all, competency, that you do have the competence to be able to do that. But then we could have that theoretical possibility that we have the one partner who creates all of these opportunities and then benefits from all of them to the exclusion of the other partners. The other thing that also brings up for me is there a potential, and you probably don't have all of the answers right now, that there could be an opportunity created where we then don't have just the one partner working on it, but we have 2 or 3, depending on what the issue is, what the work that needs to be done is. We have multiple partners working together on that. For me, that would also be a great situation if the competencies exist for real co-creation and working and collaboration.
Okay, this is great. So I hear a lot of interest in this situation or scenario in which the partner has created the opportunity, and then how do we go about, getting that opportunity allocated to someone to actually implement. And I'm hearing that we might want to look at that a bit differently, that maybe that partner should have the advantage in that situation if they have invested in creating the opportunity and they have been successful. I'm also hearing that might create some imbalance, that if some partners have more access to that situation, that they might end up with more of the opportunities. But there is also a sweet spot here where maybe some partners have that advantage. They're on the ground, they can maybe create more opportunities, but then open up and look at the partnering with others to actually carry them out. Hearing then that my concern here is, how do we make sure that if we're investing in creating opportunities, that we are not putting ourselves in a conflicted out situation where our partners have invested in creating the opportunities and then they go to another pre-qualified firm because of this conflict of interest situation. So I think we want to really, really understand how we can get onto that fine line of co-creation without conflicting out of those opportunities and handing them off to other pre-qualified partners. So that's a great situation, but I think probably the more likely scenario that's going to come up, at least initially, is this scenario where opportunities fall from the sky. So I want to spend a little bit of time, what would be a fair process on that situation when these opportunities emerge. We may or may not even think that they are helpful. We may not or may not believe that they are grounded in country demand. So what are some of the questions that we need to have answered? First of all, A, to even respond to this at all, and B, then how do we work as a consortium to figure out how to respond and get the right partners engaged? Does that make sense? Let's talk a little bit about an opportunity that falls from the sky that might, for example, let's start with the illustrative case. If it looks like that, what questions would we ask before we even decide as a consortium, do we want to respond? Maybe I'll ask the question another way. Are there any scenarios where you could imagine we would choose not to respond to an opportunity flat out?
Cheryl?
Yes.
Hi, Cheryl, George here.
Hi, George.
Hi, Cheryl. So I'm thinking of say 3 things. Just quick, top of my mind is one. I would ask myself, is this a worthy opportunity to go for in terms of return to the investment required in terms of time and potentially resources? If the answer to that is no, I would be hesitant. And also 2, some opportunities might be too risky in terms of delivery. And we can create a risk matrix to assess that, but they are there. What if there's an opportunity in Somalia? Do we want to go for it? I thought I saw a couple of fragile states. What would we do? Do we want to go for the opportunity, or do we let it pass? And then the third one, of course, is do we have the technical capacity within our consortium, or is it an opportunity that is so far off what our consortium partners can deliver, and potentially it involves us outsourcing that technical capacity, and therefore it's not necessarily fully aligned with the consortium technical expertise.
Cheryl, just to jumping from where George stopped, absolutely. My first point was, do we actually even have the competence to work on this at all? And then a risk matrix always is a great idea. And if we could create one for this project, almost like a go, no go matrix, that would be awesome. But then the other point for me would then be, the potential for impact, right? There's a reason why we took on this bid, and it's almost like we have an objective that we want to achieve. If that particular opportunity has the potential for us to really make an impact, then I think that that's also one of the key things to consider. And if the potential, like for instance, if the political economy is so deeply entangled that no matter what you do, you're unlikely to make impact. Maybe you will at some point, you know, before the second coming, but do we have low-hanging fruits that we can actually work on and deliver impact?
So I love this. So we're going to be a bit selective and making sure that it's a worthy investment, that the time that we would put into responding is actually worthwhile in terms of our assessment of the probability of being successful, that we want to avoid assignments that are too risky, where we don't have the technical capacity to deliver, or we don't think there will be real impact. So that's great. That all sounds really good to me, so that we have some principles for possibly not going after some assignments. And maybe just one last thought on this before we go back to the matchmaking, but what kind of process would we need to have in place as a consortium that we can run through? An assignment comes along, we have been keeping everybody informed, all of us, as we hear about potential opportunities, we put them into our pipeline that we share routinely across the consortium. Something pops up, it's a real opportunity. Now we have to decide, are we going to go after it? What does that look like? How do we answer these questions that you have all laid out in a very quick and fair and inclusive way?
So I think we can have some very practical tools about that with I don't know, a kind of shared space or shared folder, or where we can have those opportunities that are listed, kind of repository of them. And yes, but we may need a kind of orientation committee. I don't know, kind of orientation committee. So a subset of people from the whole consortium that can evaluate each potential opportunity, and make some orientations about the allocation, depending on the knowledge we have about the capacities of each actor, and how we can go practically to deliver it. So I see a good space for a multi-partner, short, small, kind of committee, orientation committee. Let's call it that way. A kind of orientation committee that review opportunities and arbitrates in terms of decide on whether we should go about it or not. Who is best placed to do that? I think if we just open it, this will be much also challenging, but we'll need at least to know what are the capacities of this actor or this actor, and then do this fall more in her financing capacities? First, about the region, where is this in a region where this partner is present? Is this do this fall in the core capacities of this organization? And do the member of this organization are available to do that and to deliver timely on that? So these are kind of questions that this committee can have to deliberate on openly, transparently, in a kind of orientation committee, and then allocate the task, and then send a mail to the partner or to the set of partner to build the team work, and then to build the team, operational team, and then depending on the availability, the process can be, the implementation can start. So what will be frustrating is that people just get contacted, or that tasks fall on their shoulders without any consultation, without they being involved in how this emerge for them, or that's we realize later that a task that one can do have been assigned to another one without 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 following a transparent process. So I don't know what you think about this, but my concrete point will be, let's have a kind of orientation committee that involve at least one person from each committee with each partner, and then we have review sessions for opportunities and allocate based on area of interest, key core capacities of the organization, availability, and yes. Every time also, I think what we have also in this consortium is that most of the opportunities can require joint partnership. Just like it can be Serud teaming with AMREF to work on something specific, with Serud bringing some capacities, AMREF bringing another one, etc. So most of the time it will be also team efforts, multi-partner effort to address most of the opportunities. But yes, let's see. This is my full stop.
Excellent, thank you. What others think about that? The idea of having a multi-partner kind of orientation committee that both evaluates opportunities as they come in and become concrete, and also works together to allocate to a partner or a team of partners. Does anyone disagree with that, or see any potential challenges or other things that we need to think about?
Sharon.
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm fully agreeing. So, but I'm thinking that without getting into details, is the multi-partner. John Paul is calling it orientation is good. Team or so will be organized around maybe the two objectives, because then you want partners who are aligned to assess the opportunity. Yeah, so it's not everybody, it's people who are aligned within the two objectives. So I fully agree. It's very useful. Very useful.
Any other thoughts or potential challenges with this approach? Should we have representation from every partner?
I think the last suggestion is great, so that partners that are interested in each of the objectives can actually be separated. So it's not, I know that there may be overlaps for some partners, but I think if we can divide it up according to at least your principal area of interest, that's also a great way to divvy up the team. And I think I also really like the idea around multi-partner engagements, because that's also a good way to keep everybody engaged.
Great, I like that too. I think that's a strength of ours.
Cheryl, I don't know, maybe a question for me. How many, the consortium has how many partners? And that's, for me, is, we need to find that sweet spot again between being inclusive, but then maintaining our flexibility. I'm a little concerned, but then again, that's just because I don't have full visibility right now on the number of partners in the consortium. I love Jean-Paul's idea, but maybe I'm thinking about it more as a core team. And that core team can actually just be, I don't know, 2-3 people who first see every opportunity, take it through that risk metrics with criteria that we have set, go, no go, and then presents it to the general body to say, we have reviewed this opportunity. At this time, we believe that this is a go decision or this is a no-go decision. And then if it's a go decision based on the competencies that we have within this, we're thinking that these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are potentially in the right, who are potentially right for this. If you think you have the competency and you are not mentioned here, or you have been mentioned and you don't think you have the competency, please reach out in the next 24, 48 hours, whatever, quick turnaround, just so that the decisions move very quickly. So that way we're kind of, again, finding that sweet spots between inclusiveness, as Jean-Paul has described it, but then also having quick turnarounds and everything. I'm just a little concerned that if all the partners, again, this is me assuming that there are, I don't know how many partners there are in the consortium, that this might just kind of delve a little bit into bureaucracy. But of course, I could be wrong.
No, that's great. So I hear all of this. And so maybe we only have a few minutes left. I think these are two very critical points that we have coalesced around, right? So what's the process? And then what are the principles and the criteria for both those two objectives, for assessing an opportunity and for allocating the opportunity? So I'm wondering, Henak, in these last few minutes, is it possible to do a quick Menti poll on those two things? Just getting everybody's chance to weigh in on the criteria to assess an opportunity, and then the composition of the committee to carry out both of these, or sorry, we have the assess and allocate are the two functions that we have to worry about. And so asking, first of all, for this committee, who's going to be responsible for both of these, do we want it to be representation of everyone? Do we want to have it to be small? What are some, just maybe open-ended, Henak? What should this committee look like? And then the second question, what are some criteria that we want to use to assess an opportunity and to allocate? Just to get last minute feedback from everyone. Hello?
Yes, I'm just adjusting the questions quickly, but it should be ready.
Am I still sharing my screen?
No, I'm
okay,
right now.
Great.
Second. Great. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So if you can go to menti.com, menti.com, and type in the code 1707406. You should see two questions that pop up. The first one, do you agree with the idea of creating a multi-partner committee to assess and allocate opportunities? And the second question, which criteria should we use to assess opportunities and allocate?
And Henak, I think there's a very important question on the size of the committee. Should we aim for more inclusive or smaller and leaner?
Sure, unfortunately, I can only add two questions right now due to, just the maximum number of questions I have.
Okay, feel free to put in the chat then, everyone, if you would like to vote on that or give more thoughts on the size.
Cheryl, can you see responses popping up?
I can, yes.
Great.
Oh, there's an interesting idea that we have a smaller core team, but they are nominated and voted on by this whole big group. Henak, when will we get kicked out of this breakout?
We have 17 more minutes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought we were finished at 9:30, sorry.
Great. So we have a few responses trickling in. To the first question, do you agree with the idea of creating a multi-partner committee to assess and allocate opportunities? So folks are saying yes, this addresses transparency. It also needs to be a smaller size though, a smaller core group of selected partners nominated from the general committee. So I think the general consensus here, Cheryl, is that yes, we should form it, but keep it quite small.
So if anyone disagrees with that, please enter that in now. It looks like we're moving towards consensus. So please let us know if anyone disagrees with having a committee that's small, a small core team that's selected by the wider consortium. No one disagrees? Hannah, do you want to go to the next one maybe?
Sure. So the second question asks, which criteria should we use to assess the opportunities they want to allocate? We'll give folks just a few more minutes to respond to this question. So we have a few responses coming in here. We're about 4 responses. There's a bucket related to potential for impact, competencies, past performance, ability to deploy quickly, sort of the political context and feasibility, and in the country context, of course, the language presence. We have a few others that have trickled in. Another one around alignment to our overall core objectives and values. That's a really important one. And capacity to deliver, so our technical capacities to deliver, and our strengths of our networks. So it's a pretty good list so far.
Really great.
Any objections to some of the criteria that have been listed here?
So, hi Enoch, hi Sharon.
Yes, George?
Oh no, I was just thinking that, so when we get to developing the rubric, I hope I'm not jumping the gun, the question around assessment. Assessment might be seen more external facing as regards the opportunity, while the allocate question and the rubric that we need to have is more looking internally within the consortium itself. So the assessment, you're assessing whether it's a go, no go, the risk, ROI, all those kind of things. But then when it gets to allocation, is a slightly different question that looks at the technical capacity, presence in the country, all those kind of things, which is more inward facing insofar as the consortium is concerned. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, George. Absolutely. So together we're looking out, is this opportunity consistent with our principles and our ability to deliver and have impact? And then once we say yes, then we have to look internally, how do we put together the right team, the right partner or set of partners to respond? So given that rubric, is there anything that's different in your view about our process, or would anything change, or could all of that be addressed by the same committee?
Same committee, Cheryl, thank you. Same committee, Cheryl, but two different tools that are easy to use. If you mix the two, my concern was when you mix the two, then you, so the first one should be bride to the second to some extent, not fully. The first one of assessing the opportunity. It's about the opportunity, while the allocation, you can easily get brided when you mix the assessment and the allocation and the interest that you expect within the consortium when you get to allocation. But if you have a rubric that assists you to just assess whether is it a go or no go for all of us as a partnership, then when it's a go, you pause and then you go to the next tool, who is the best suited, or which combination of two partners internally are best suited to go for it, or to go for it on our behalf, all of us. See where I'm coming from?
Yes, and that is super helpful. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Hanok, are you finished with that?
Yes, sure. Share now.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share because I want to make sure everyone sees that we're capturing these ideas. This is so what I'm hearing that, and George, I think that was a great summary. So just make sure everyone also agrees. So we have now, I think, clarified two different sets of decisions that we will have to make routinely. The first is to assess opportunities as they come along, if they have dropped from the sky, and that's putting aside Jean-Paul's scenario where we create the opportunities, which I still think we have a lot of work to flesh out. And then once we have assessed that we want to go forward, we have to allocate. And so what I've heard from everyone is that these are two different processes, two different sets of criteria. One is external facing, the other internal facing, but that both could be carried out by this committee. This committee that will be small and lean, but nominated and accepted by the whole consortium as a group. And that we can support these processes with some tools that embody criteria, et cetera, that will help to keep it as objective as possible, but understanding that, you know, some decisions might not be entirely objective, but if we have this committee, we have these criteria, we have these tools, it will be as objective as possible, hopefully lean and not bureaucratic. How is that for a summary of where we are?
Sounds good to me.
Does anything there make anyone feel uncomfortable?
No, Cheryl, that's 10 out of 10.
Okay. Well, this all came from all of you, so this is great. So we had this idea. I really like it, the idea of this kind of group and these processes, criteria, and tools to support them. Now, since we have a few minutes left, I wonder if we want to go back to Jean-Paul's really important point about creating opportunities. And do we want to discuss a bit more there of, I'm going to put this under the potential challenges and other issues, because I think that we really want to make this one, everyone has the incentive and the interest to create opportunities that they will lead to some for that specific organization, but maybe also shared. We want to avoid conflict of interest situations. Are there any other thoughts about what we can do to make this work well?
I can comment a bit further about the idea of creating opportunities. I think building a bit on what we have seen from the ACS, African Collaborative for Health Financing Solution experience, what we mean by creating opportunities is the fact that countries are not always aware about the possible way a given project can support them, or given a particular way, a given problem in a country can be addressed or can be solved by a given opportunity that exists within a consortium. So by creating opportunities, what the one dimension I see of it is this strategic continuous communication with country partners while in a meeting on COVID-19, for instance, one project to support in this dimension. And it's not as such to influence decision making about in or enforcing countries or in really being in place of conflict of interest, but it's about ensuring that countries have a maximum exposition to the resources available in the consortium to support them. This is by this way that I see the issue, and by any way, there will be probably some way countries have to express their own demands, and as this demand is expressed, it have to go through the criteria that the World Bank have to set or the GFF have to set. But maybe just to be a bit clear, this is how I see the issue of setting up or creating opportunities. Over, maybe can put some clarity, maybe.
Jean-Paul, thank you so much. And I actually, as you were speaking, I kind of wanted to broaden your point beyond creating opportunities, but also raising country awareness. And
raising country awareness, yes, that is, yes. This
right,
is
that's a whole other function. And
yeah.
it's really, I think, something that this backbone and this committee, and we can really think about ways, how do we make sure the countries know what is out there, what's available, and all the different ways to support them. Some of that may lead to opportunities for some specific partners, but I think that issue of country awareness is much broader and really important. Yeah. And it's something I think that we can contribute a lot. I'm sure many here have the same experience, that countries, the World Bank comes along, the GFF comes along, and they think they just have to do what the task team leader suggests in order to get that funding. But that's not the case, and maybe we can help them also have the tools to shape what those opportunities look like. And then the second order question is which partners help to respond to that. I really like that point. Any other thoughts on this? I think that might be something, if we are successful very early on, even before we come together and flesh out our approach and principles, but really thinking about what are the opportunities that all of us have in all the different ways that we're engaged with different countries to get the finger on the pulse of the demand and really increase their awareness of the stakeholders there about what is possible and the resources that are there. Any other thoughts? I really honestly was not expecting this much detail in the short amount of time that we had. This has been really super productive, super exciting. Howard just gave me a 3-minute warning, so I'll open it up one last time for any other thoughts or issues, concerns that you have, anything that we want to be thinking about to make us as effective and fair and efficient as possible as a consortium.
Cheryl, just quickly.
Please, George.
Very quickly, just a couple of things that I had put together. I just had as we were starting. I guess we'll also, and so just in case I repeat, it's okay, but quickly. I guess we'll also put together a skills matrix for the whole consortium. I guess that's captured somewhere, and it will fit within some of the discussions we've been having. And then potential to have opportunity for us to regularly update partner resources and CVs and such, and the capabilities within partners, within either that matrix or some other tool that we might have. Because partners, I expect partners, there will be transitions, there will be new teams joining the partnership or the partners that are in this consortium. So how do we ensure there is a continuous way to keep our resources updated? so that we don't lose on any opportunity in terms of what we can deliver. I guess we are also open to opportunities that might require us to outsource. So not everything might necessarily be within the consortium that we're in today. It would mean we have an opportunity, it meets the criteria, but then we feel that we just have to source some expertise or whatever it is to have the opportunity done, because then it is of a certain strategic value. And then, yeah. Okay, good. I think that's it for now. Intel gathering, I don't know where Intel gathering fits, because if we want to keep our antennae high and picking the right messages from, say, GFF, World Bank, how do we continuously gather intel and manage it in a wise way within the consortium, so that then opportunities don't pass us? Yes, just that for now, Cheryl. Thank you.
Excellent, George. Thank you so much. Great. Any other? I think this idea that you raised here about the, constantly gathering intelligence, all of you are closer to the ground, you're closer to these partners. We have our other access, but how can we make sure that all of that intelligence gets into one place so that we're constantly, as a group, responsible for updating that and sharing? So I have 7 seconds left, so I'm not going to summarize here. I will summarize the discussion when we're back in plenary, so please jump in and add anything. Now I say I have 115 seconds. I'm not understanding Zoom at all. But yes, I will try to summarize all of this really rich discussion when we're back in plenary. I hope you will all jump in either through the chat or just unmuting your mic and share anything. We'll obviously summarize all.
All right, I think we have everyone back in plenary. I hope that went well. Do you guys know how to use your reaction buttons down in the bottom right? Give us a little bit of a reaction as to how your group discussion went. I think we have a few minutes to quickly maybe report out some highlights from each of the group discussions before we go into our last quick session on next steps for the actual proposal development. Henok and Cheryl, do you want to give us just a few minutes of highlights from the discussion that you had in your small group?
Thanks, Allison. I want to thank everyone. It was super rich and super detailed for the short amount of time we had. So I'll just give the highlights, but we took very detailed notes. On the governance structure, the group really suggests that we have a lean committee that is responsible for the two sets of decisions that are super important for our governance. One is assessing opportunities as they come, and the second is for allocating opportunities that once we have agreed to go after it. That this committee could be representative, having nominations come from everyone, but trying to keep it lean. And then those different decisions would have sets of criteria and principles to make them fairly and transparently, and possibly supported by some tools that we can work together, like a go, no go matrix or, things like that, but some supporting tools that everyone would contribute to as we go along. We had a great discussion about how to look at opportunities that drop from the sky, that just come along, versus those that we might be trying to create as a group or as individual partners are creating, and that we want to make sure that we can walk the fine line between our commitment with partners versus some of the procurement limitations that the World Bank and GFF might have, and we'll have to work through that. finally, to use this opportunity of this great consortium with so many connections on the ground in countries to help to make sure that our country partners and stakeholders are aware. They're aware of the many different resources out there, how opportunities can be shaped by them, and that they could tap into a dynamic consortium like this, but making sure that we invest something as a consortium in raising that awareness. Anyone
Great.
else from the group like to add?
In the interest of time, I'm going to ask Keith if he could maybe just do a quick overview. We touched on many of the same themes, but of the discussion we had in our group as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that you mentioned, Cheryl, you'll see in the very detailed notes that I took on your slide, so sorry about that. But I think a particular thing that we feel like is necessary before even getting to sort of how we govern this consortium is spending a little bit more time having us really understand what all of our values are. So there was a discussion around what are R4D's values for this consortium, and you know, can we all see those? But really, it's about shifting away from what are R4D's values, but what is this consortium values? We want to really understand each partner's approaches and values and ensure that we're all aligned on those, so that when this sort of go, no-go process comes up, we're all clear what our approaches are, what we feel comfortable with pursuing. And if there's an example where it comes to our attention that potentially the TTL's approach being suggested is not in line with country priorities, for example, what is our consortium stance on that? Would we not pursue that if we know that those are things that we don't agree with? So that was one thing I think we wanted to make sure happens, is that we share values and things like that. And similarly for the matchmaking process, we also talked about, you know, 3 broad categories are technical expertise, and then geographic or regional presence, which we've decided we need to define further and make sure we all agree what that actually means. But also, because this is a not continuous engagement, that these come up sort of ad hoc, that staff availability within each partner organization should also be considered. But again, an important step before we can even do this is really making sure that all of us have understood what each consortium partner's skills, strengths, and gaps are. Maybe also having that in sort of a database that we can all quickly reference, so that we can all help each other create the right combinations of partners, know when, if an opportunity does lie outside our entire consortium set of skills, do we then need to consider bringing on an outside partner just to fill that one particular gap? But on that, you know, also making sure that I clearly identify sort of a first right of refusal among all of the consortium partners before we then start trying to expand. And that there'll be more notes shared later, but those I think were the big takeaways.
Everybody, thank you for getting so engaged in such a short period of time. I think that we've gotten a lot of rich information that we'll digest and funnel back to you. I think that's going to be a theme over the next 10 days, especially, and then obviously going forward, we will try to kind of capture the good thinking that we're doing together, feed it back to you for rapid review and feedback, and then move forward. Let me turn over to Hinok for what we actually need to do to get a winning proposal submitted by October 5th. Over to you, Hinok.
Great, thanks, Allison. So first off, thank you to everyone for signing your teaming agreements for this meeting. That's much appreciated. So by now, all partners should have received a packet of information or templates that need to be completed by this Thursday, September 24th. And to facilitate our overall submission, we're asking all partners to complete and send through a list of documents. The first is a brief description of your org's background. So we anticipate that's about half a page. The next is a brief overview of your org's capes and experiences, and one or more of the outline objectives in the terms of reference. So here about a page to 2 pages. The third is to fill out the key personnel summary table, listing out up to about 5 proposed key personnel, and to also include your fully loaded daily rates of the proposed key personnel. So I'll pause here and see if Allison can chime in a bit more about what should be included in the fully loaded daily rates.
Hi, everybody. Yes, we've received some information from the donor about some of the questions that have been asked about what's included in those fully loaded rates. And at the moment, the information that we've got is that the rates can include basic salary, social charges, overhead, fees and profits, and allowance. So that should help you as you're deciding what sort of rate would be included for your staff. Now, note that the annex, the financial rate sheet that we'll be providing, it should reflect the maximum rate for staff, and we should be mapping the relevant staff to the rate table. So that's some of the guidance we've received to date. We can always share more if you have more questions, and we can hopefully ask us as well. Does anybody have questions about that? Or?
Maybe let me just reiterate one thing that Allison said, because I think it's important. It took us a bit to digest it.
Yeah.
The maximum rate is important because we will not be able to use anyone more expensive than what we include now as maximum rate. So we know that we might use staff that would be lower than the rate that we would include, but we want to make sure that the rate that's going in is the maximum rate that you would need to be able to mobilize the people you would like to be mobilizing for the assignment.
Exactly. You want to use the rates for the most qualified staff to deliver the objectives according to their information. It's a ceiling that's fixed for the duration of the framework agreement. And you can add staff later at the task order stage, but they have to fall within the rates provided. So make sure that you don't provide a rate that is not going to help you recover your cost on those positions.
So we understand that people may want to discuss this further, and we are ready and willing to help you think through those rate-related questions so that you are coming to this engagement with something that will be not a money loser for your organization. This is so that please reach out about the rate issues if you have any questions at all, so that we get that resolved before submission.
And now, so just to add a few more points in terms of the submission requirements. So along with the key personnel summary table, we're also asking all partners to submit CVs of the proposed key personnel using the template we provided, and to finally submit the firm qualification questionnaire, which is about 15 yes or no questions, certifying the eligibility of your firm. And also, once we have a proposal drafted, hopefully by the end of this week, or next week, we'll be reaching out for some discrete technical reviews or inputs, so likely next week or so.
Okay, so we've given a lot of information and talked a lot here. I would like to, and we are at time, I would like to be respectful of the 2-hour time commitment that you've made. If there are any outstanding questions or comments, please feel free to raise them now. If not, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Allison Stanfill, and you can reach out to Hanuk as starting places for any further questions that you have. And we count on you. Yes, I hear one. Go ahead.
Yes, Alison, I
yes,
just, yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about the rates thing. Like, does it mean filling the different sections of the CV, or what do you refer to as rates?
That's the actual compensation rate. But Sean, I propose that we have a separate conversation about this, because I think we just want to make sure that we're doing this in a harmonized way, and everybody, you know, is putting their best situation forward. So let's arrange to have a conversation about that. Okay, Jean?
All right, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep. And just to one other point, this turnaround time is ridiculously short. I think it's we're counting on all of you for the partner input packet to submit to us completed forms. These are not things that R4D is then going to edit afterwards. So please know that our sort of equal footing and partnership begins now, and that we're counting on your engagement in this very tight proposal period as well, so that we're able to focus in on pulling together our approach and submitting, something that's representative of this fabulous consortium. So please do be proactive, be responsive. We are, counting on your engagement, and we're really looking forward to hopefully exploring this opportunity with you all over the next 3 years. So with that, I will, I guess, call an end to this first consortium meeting. Thank you so much for participating. Please feel free to reach out to us, and we will be in touch as soon as possible with draft aspects of our proposals for your feedback.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.